Hey everybody, MLive's Nick Baumgardner here, back for another edition of Ask Nick, our weekly, Michigan football mailbag here on MLive.com. As always, we try to pull out a question or two, lump them together, maybe pick one, and answer them here on a video for you, a little more detail. Again, I always appreciate everybody participating. These are always a fun feature and one I really enjoy. This week's question, I'm just gonna go with one because I thought it was kind of interesting and it's sort of telling to where this team's at right now. Comes from John Gordon via Twitter. John writes that in his opinion, this team doesn't pass the eye test. John says, experts say it's not as bad as it looks. Should I believe my eyes or the experts? Well, that's an interesting question and one I think that's pertinent right now for Michigan, especially this early in the season. It's only been 3 games. They've only played one quality opponent on the road at Notre Dame, and that obviously didn't go well. First game of the season was against a lowly team in Appalachian State. They had no problem running them off the field, and then last week was a Miami of Ohio game. Again, a really bad football team in Miami of Ohio. Michigan has a really rough close halfway through the second quarter. It gets really dicey for them, and they allow Miami to get back in the game. And so that score looks a little closer than maybe it could have been, or maybe it should have been overall. So where are we right now with this team? Well, what's the eye test say? Well, I think you look at it a few different ways, and you can look at it in any way, from a talent perspective or from an organizational perspective. Where do you see this team at, despite the fact that it's 2-1? And it's really hard. I'll say last week, I didn't think that the eye test really did them any favors, and I know that the first quarter was fine. They scored 10 points. They get points on their first 2 drives. The second half was fine. They ran the football and did the things they needed to do, but there were some other things in there. Not just the second quarter, which was a mess, that I really looked at and said, I wonder about this team, where they're at right now. Notably the third quarter. They start the game in the third quarter. It's a 17-10 football game. Michigan gets the ball, or I believe Miami got the ball. I can't remember who got the ball first. Anyway, Michigan's first possession does nothing. And, they don't look like, at that point in the game, a team that's very comfortable or confident in Baumgardner in that situation. Devin had interception. Things have been a little shaky offensively. They tried to run the football. They got pretty predictable. Eventually it did work, but it was still something where you looked at it and you said, geez, they look a little shaky. I think, the effort and everything else was there, but just the general feel for that offense of where they're at with the whole scheme of everything, passing-wise, especially without Devin Funchess, it looked a little shaky. On the ground game, however, I think I'll go the other end of that and say that the eye test, to me, proved that they were probably better than they showed, maybe even against Notre Dame, in a game where it got out of hand pretty quick because you weren't able to convert those first 2 drives. The pass game wasn't really very good. But I thought the run game had some things working for it against Notre Dame. Not a lot, but it had some. And then against Miami, I think they did whatever they wanted for the most part. So my eye test offensively sort of reads that the passing game isn't very comfortable right now, or very, very strong. And I think the running game is probably better than people are giving it credit for. That's sort of where I sit on that. What does that mean for the whole offense? I don't know. Do they pass the eye test offensively? Yes and no, because I think there's some spots that we wondered if the running game would be there this season with the offensive line struggling. I think the offensive line's been better, so that's certainly a positive. I think Derek Green and Davion Smith have been better. Derek Green much better, and so those are 2 pretty big positives in my opinion. Passing game without Devin Funchess, though, it looks shaky. It looks not very steady and not very comfortable. So. Jury's kind of out on that. I think the overall question that we're trying to ask here is, are they as bad as they looked at Notre Dame, or was that kind of an aberration or a one-off deal, and are they a little bit better than that, and that was just a bad day? I think we're going to find out a lot more about that after Saturday's game against Utah, because I think Utah's a good enough team to beat Michigan if they're making mistakes and making these silly errors that they've made, here, for the past year plus, whatever it might be. And you go back to that second quarter against Miami with the botched kickoff return and the fumble and the interception. I know it was tipped at the line and everything else, but still 3 turnovers in 5 minutes, and then the sideline miscommunication with the officials and the delay of game after a timeout, just completely inexcusable. All very controllable mistakes that you made, that just, you're not making them because you're being aggressive or taking chances. You're just making mistakes and giving the team the ball. So from the standpoint of being fundamentally sound and being very well coached and being, like a team that looks like it's ready to turn the corner, I can't say that they pass the eye test right now in that, because they haven't shown it to us. However, Is this team falling off the rails? Do they look like just totally lost and just horrible like they did for stretches of that Notre Dame game? I don't think it's that bad either. So I think we're still somewhere in the middle. You know, I don't know what experts we're talking about here who say things look better than they are, or maybe some say they look worse than they are. You know, I think it's still too early to tell. We haven't been able to glean as much from them. You know, this is a long season, obviously. We know they have deficiencies. We know they have problems. We know they have areas they have to work on. But they also have a lot of talent. We know that. You know, I think the eye test on the defensive side of the ball, you look at the front seven, they certainly pass it. You know, and I've said that, defended their pass rush, I think, a few times here. You watch those films, and, you know, their defensive line is doing some things. It's not showing up in the stat sheet in terms of sacks or huge tackle for loss numbers, but they're pretty tough to block right now, and you know other teams are kind of combating against that by getting rid of that ball really fast. And in turn, if you're able to cover, which you know again your corners don't pass the eye test right now because they struggle against Notre Dame. If you're able to cover, that's a great situation for you because your front seven's taking away the run, and they're putting pressure on the quarterback enough to where that pocket's not going to stand there for more than 3-4 seconds. So not even 4 seconds. I would say three. It's 1, 2, 3 and go, and then I don't know how much more time you have if you're a quarterback against Michigan's defensive front right now. So. Parts of this team pass the eye test, parts of them do not. Parts of this team are better than they probably showed against Notre Dame. Parts of them are exactly where they probably were against Notre Dame. We're going to find out against Utah how much better or how much more improved the defensive backs are. Was that a situation of you didn't get you play without Jabril Peppers, you play without Raymond Taylor, you started slow and then you kind of lost it there. Was that maybe worse than you really are, or was that sort of where you're going to be? We're going to find out, I think, against Utah, especially with the corners. And then we're really going to find out at some point here very soon. I think this weekend is going to be the big test on Baumgardner. Where is he? The eye test right now is incomplete on him in this offense because he doesn't look comfortable in the pocket at times, or not nearly enough anyway. He's hanging onto the ball too long. I'm not going to sit there and kill the offensive line for some of these sacks because I think a lot of those against Notre Dame and a lot of the pressures against Notre Dame and even some last week were on Devin. He's got to be better at that. And the corners have to be better. Those are the two areas I look at right now. I think the offensive line's progressing. I'm not totally sold on them yet, but I think eye test-wise, from what my expectations were, they've passed. Now, Devin has to get better, the defensive backfield has to get better, and the team in general, from a fundamental skill set level, whatever you want to call it, like we said last week, they have to get better at that. If those things happen, then I think, yeah, they are probably better than what they've shown. I know their talent's better than what they've shown, just a matter of putting all those pieces together. So, long story short, to be determined. I think we'll know a lot more about this football team after Saturday, one way or the other. This is a good Utah football team, a team that can beat Michigan if Michigan doesn't play well. Michigan's got to play at its best, I think, to win this game. So if it does, that's a big bump for them and a big boost because this is no slouch, no cupcake. So we'll see how it all plays out. Thanks for the questions this week, everyone. Check out the rest of the answers and the rest of this mailbag. And we'll be back Saturday to talk to you after Michigan and Utah.